Okay, so I'm going to do a wash of Thin Down Black Plum inside the mouth. I'm going all the way along behind the tongue. And we're going to just let this dry while we move on and do other things. Okay. So now what I want you to do is to get out neutral gray. You don't need a lot. So we're going to start with neutral gray. Now with the neutral gray, we're going to shade down the outside of the white part of the eye. And then again on this side. So it's the outside. That might be the wood guy, Vicky.
He's awake. Can I help you? It's Vicky speaking.
And I'm going to do both sides.
I thought she had you on there already. She sent you the link. Did you email me?
I did.
Yes, she did.
So I float now down that side of the eye and again that side of the eye. So we're going to do that on both eyes. And you can just blot with your finger. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take, I'm going to side load in this mix. I'm using my 1/4 inch or a 6 or an 8. And you see in your picture, my picture got doused with coffee the other day. I'm going to float down that side. I always blot with my finger. And then I'm going to use the corner and just do a little highlight up there. Okay, so there's more to go on these. So for now, we're going to do that part. This is with the mix of 2. Now I'm going to just side load corner of my 1/4 again. And we're going to put just in this, I'm sorry, this is in just purple petal, no mix. So I'm just going to do these little kind of slash highlights with the corner of the brush. Do you see how they kind of pop the eye right up? They really pull the purple out that's there. And we're giving a whole total round to the eyes again. So it's really rounding our eyes. So I'm going to outline with lamp black, thin it down, use your favorite liner. I'm also going to outline the black. Do not outline above the cheek. So we're just outlining the black. So you're outlining between the white, and then you're going to add the lash line. Now I want the lash line to be a little thicker than the other lines. And we'll pull some lashes off. Now the lashes, you don't want them to come too far over into the black. They're about I'm going to say about 1/4 of the way. Do you see where I stop with those? Now that one's a little thicker, so that means the other guy's got to get a little tiny thicker. There. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm taking Thin Down Neutral Gray and I'm just pulling that little thin line as a highlight on our lash line. So now I'm going to side load float and shade along the top of her mouth.
That's with black plum?
Yeah, with black plum. We'll dry in between. So I'll just use my heat gun. And then I'll shade along the bottom, right across the tongue. And dry again. Now I'm going to shade behind the tongue. So this is behind the tongue. So it gets nice and dark back there. And then I'm going to shade coming in along the top. Whoops, I guess I should side load it again, eh? I think this paint lasts forever on the brush. I'm going to come in and shade down that side, flip my brush over, come in and shade down that side. And so it gives that little curved bum looking thing. That's all we can say. I'm going to take vintage pink, scuff it off. I've got it on my dome stippler, whatever you use for dry brushing. And I'm going to dry brush nice and soft in here in the hollow of the mouth. And then I'll go on to the tongue where we've dry brushed, or where we've shaded, pardon me. And I'm going to now pick up a little bit of the cotton candy on the dirty brush. I'm only going to dry brush that on the tongue. We're not going up in the hollow of the mouth. So just to brighten the tongue a little bit, and that's with that dome stippler. Now he's in the wash, and I'm going to make you dry brush again. Warm white on our lip. And it's not very much again. So it's just some warm white. And I'm going to do it twice because I really want it to pop up a little more than that. There. Warm white on that lip. So we're going to be using lush green. We're going to be using matcha and celery shoot. So some of you girls have left the top part here in bleach sand because Wendy did not leave a line between these two. And so people painted that bleach sand all the way up there. So now what I'm going to show you is, I want you to watch here, and I'm taking a number 1 liner, or you could use a 0 round, so I'm going to come here with lush green, and I'm going to come from this side with lush green. So leave that wet. So while that's wet, I pick up matcha, and I'm going to come from the middle. And do you see how while it's wet, if I blend it off into that wet lush green, it fades out. My highlight's fading out. Now I'm going to pick up a little of the celery shoot and come to the very center again and just streak a little of that sideways. And so now that mouth or that top lip becomes base coated and highlighted, all as a wet blend with a small round or a number 1 liner. There is something that I'm going to have you do right now before we go to our ground. And that is take the handle of your brush and add the white dot highlight. The reason I didn't do those back where I have them in my notes is because they stay wet for a bit and they're raised, and we would have had to add our eyelashes and outline everything after that, and it just has such a chance of being smudged. So if you go ahead now and just dot those in, we're staying away from that area and we're going to be down in the bottom, so we'll be a little bit safer. So I just dotted those, and that adds a nice bright look to her face. So we're going to shade underneath, and again, I do hop all over the place, but so I'm going to shade underneath, just come in like so, with the mix of 1-to-1 lush green and raw umber. You're not panicked if you get any on your little toes, because there's going to be grass coming up there. If you were doing this to start with, because we're doing it in the class, we kind of have to do things at a certain place. But really, if you were going to redo this at all, I would do this first. Have your pattern transferred on and shade underneath and do the wash underneath before you even base coat your froggy. I'm going to shade underneath. Because we're going to put some grass pieces coming up, and we don't want them to look like they're coming from nowhere. So we're just shading underneath here to strengthen this up, and we're going to be putting in our wash. So we do this shading, and then we're going to dry it. So I'm thinning down, and I'm going to just apply a wash of this mix coming out from the edges. I've dried where we shaded, so I'll do this part first, and I just take my fingers and I'm going to smudge it off so that it's going to end nice and uneven. And I'll repeat over on this side, bringing this wash out. You want it uneven. And it's just going to be in behind our grass and our leaves. Okay, so we're going to do that. And we're going to use, you can use a script liner, nice fine liner, and you're going to pull grass pieces in this thinned mix. Some coming up from in front of the belly, a couple coming up in front of the little fingers. You never want all of your grass to start and stop at the same place. We are going to put more pronounced pieces in here as well, but we like to have some sort of little what we call shadow or faint pieces. And if you have pieces sticking up in front of your little toes, it makes it look more realistic. People tend to try to avoid that. We don't. You want to have them poking up in front. I'll have a couple of tall, skinny pieces coming out from behind. I'll pull a few in behind that leg over here. If you need to keep thinning down as you go. This one's on a little tray, so I might like a few pieces kind of coming off to the side. Depends on your piece a lot too. This is the thinned down raw umber and lush green. You know what? I think I might have my volume down a bit. I do. Well, yeah, it's not the Marie that I shouldn't hear. Her volume might be down, but it's them hearing me. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Yeah. I was watching a video today and it was loud, so I turned it down, and I forgot, and I even said to myself, turn that back up again, because the people on Zoom aren't going to hear you tonight. But you know, I don't listen either. Hmm? Oh yeah? Bad sign or good sign? I always heard it was a good sign. We're going to take Terra Coral on a dome stippler, dry brush our cheeks. Nice and soft. Now, we can use warm white if we want for a highlight, or cotton candy, whatever you'd like. And we're going to, do a little comma highlight. I'm going to grab into warm white because it's there. And I'm just going to do a little press, pull up. Press, pull up. So these little tiny comma highlights on the corners of her cheek. And we're going to use, I'm going to use my 3/8. Yeah. Did you lock the door, Vicky?
Not the shop door.
I just think about that rinky-dink guy there. So I'm going to side load. We don't want it bold. We want a nice soft float inside, and I just blot with my finger, just inside that mouth or lip. There, with our Terra Coral. So that was a nice side load float. I'm just going to pick up some of the lush green, raw umber, and plantation pine, and I just take my brush and I just work those colors together. This way you never have the same color. And I'm going to take my brush up on the chisel, and I'm just going to slide up. I use a little pressure when I start and ease off as I come up. This gives me stronger pieces of grass. They're going to be fatter. Pick up all the colors, brush, mix, just back and forth, patting on the palette. And I'll just come in with the chisel of my brush and pull in at different heights. You never want your grass to start and stop all at the same place. You want to have a few starting from further down On both sides I'm coming with this. We'll slide those around. And get in these pieces. Once I have enough in there, and you can always add more. So if you're thinking, well, how do I know if it's enough? If you feel like it needs to fill in a little bit more, you can come back after and put in a bit more. I still want to see her little feet, but I don't want them to look like they're in front of the grass. We want her to look like she's in the grass. So once I've got several in there, now I'm going to just pick a little bit of the celery, and this is just celery, not celery shoot. Bit of celery on the corner of the brush, and I'll pull in a few pieces from the front again. These pieces will end up having a bit more, and it's still the same dirty colors on the brush. Celery on the top. These pieces will give a highlight on them, so they will appear to be closer to us. So it's just with that little bit of celery. We're not looking for tons of this, just a couple of pieces. That's going to give us a few pieces of grass in the foreground. And that's our grass. Here. I'm going to double load my number 6 filbert in purple petal and dioxazine purple. So I double load. Oh, thank goodness, that heater. And I'm going to work with my brush, my filbert, on its side. Instead of flat on like that, I turn it on what we're calling our chisel. And I'm going to take, and I'm going to put my brush, now it's difficult to see, I set my brush down and I lean towards the handle, and that spreads open the bristles. So I'll do it this way, dark purple down, light purple up, lean to spread open the bristles. Again, lean forward, spread open. Dark down. You can get 2, maybe 3 petals out of a load, but you'll end up, if you leave too much, for this one I can just do 2 little dashes along the bottom because the other petals are going to overlap it from the next flower. So it's press, lean forward. When you lean forward on that handle, it spreads open those bristles and widens your petal edge. So do you see here? It's lean forward, and that spreads it open as I pull back. Lean, pull. Like so. So I go all the way around with this. Now this looks a lot brighter to me on my camera than it really is. Whenever you do your flowers like this, whatever color is on top, that's the one that unloads last. So that's the one you're going to see at the tip of your petals. So that's why our dark is down. Now here we have a couple of buds. So we pull those. So you're going to continue with all your purple flowers.
Same brush?
Yeah, I'm double loading my number 6 filbert in the light buttermilk and the moon yellow. So now the moon yellow will be our dark, of course. And I'm going to put my brush down again on the tip, lean forward and spread. But these petals, if you see, they have a little ruffle on them. So really I'm going to overlap 2 petals to create one. So it's press, press. So do you see how they're getting a little scallop almost? And that's going to create that. So lean forward on your handle, lean forward on your handle. Those petals, those 2 are one. And again, as these colors dry, they're very transparent. Most yellows are. So we will go back when they're dry and repeat on top. So all the yellow. With my double loaded Deerfoot, the heel has the raw sienna, so I keep the raw sienna down and the sun gold up, sunset gold up. So raw sienna, and it's stipple this little center of our flower. So you will go ahead and do all of your little flowers, but first I'll show you. Now I'm going to take and pick up a little bit of moon yellow on the toe, pounce it really well on the palette, and then just gently touch into that center. So do you see how it softens it a little bit? Just gently, just tap a few places. That's all you're doing with the moon yellow. So it's raw sienna, and on the double loaded brush, raw sienna and the sunset gold, stipple it in, pick up moon yellow on the toe, pounce it on the palette, and gently tap in a highlight on there. I'm going to shade dioxazine purple on the purple flowers around our little centers before we put our little pollen dots on, so that we have a shadow behind and they'll stand out nicely. So once you do that, then you're going to go ahead and you're going to shade raw sienna on the yellow ones. But with the yellow, what I want you to see is, because we did 2 coats and because there's not as much contrast with our yellows, if I, instead of shade around as a circle, I shade next to it. Do you see how I'm kind of coming in like a C? So I'm not coming all the way down the petals, but it sort of semi-starts like that. And that separates the yellow ones a bit better. The purples are distinguishable because they are stronger contrast, but with yellow it's difficult for that. So now you can see that you see a difference. So I did those as almost a C shading. So go ahead and shade your purple and yellow flowers before we do our pollen. Okay, so I like, when I'm doing my leaves, I've got my filbert. I like to pick up my 2 colors, double loaded, and just dab them on the palette messy. I dab again so that my leaves don't look striped. If you have just a fresh double load and you go on them, they tend to look, to me, they look striped. I'm going to put my brush down at the base of my petal. That's the bottom. Press with the tip, lift, and give it a little gentle twist as I pull off. So there is my leaf. So pick up my colors, dab on the palette, messy dab, press, lift, press, little twist as you lift off. You're never going to cover all of those transfer lines, so you will erase them afterwards. If you're busy trying to follow those little lines, you could just drive yourself crazy. Press, pull towards myself if I'm doing these ones. If it's just easier, messy dab. If it's easier for you to press and pull, just press and push away. Some people have a certain way they like to do them. Then just turn your piece and continue doing whichever way feels better for you. Some people have no problem doing both directions, so they just go ahead. If you have leaves that look like they're floating afterwards, you'll go in with your liner and you'll put a little stem and attach them. So that's how we're going to do our leaves. If you prefer to go with a flat, I do the same thing. I've got the messy dab there. I'll come up here and I would put my brush down, press, lift. So you end up with the same looking leaf. It's just done with the flat brush instead of doing it with. Now if you can see through right there, I can see through my leaf, I will go back after and go over it again. All right, so that's your choice in your leaves. So I'm just going to do some dots here with my stylus. So I start with the raw sienna, and you want them to come out a little bit nicely around the edges. Same thing on the purple guy. Still using the raw sienna. Then I switch to the sunset gold. You're not wanting to have too big of a stylus tip. And you'll see on the purple, the moon yellow show up quite nicely. But if I go moon yellow on the yellow ones, you don't see them very much. But if I switch over to the light buttermilk, they show up. But if I touch the light buttermilk onto the purple ones, I did it today to check it, they look like they're white. So that's our last step, would be these, and make sure you erase really well. And that's